Hi everybody, it's the Shy Genealogist, and today I'd like to talk to you about ways that we can really amp up this family group sheet that we use so often in our research. When I originally created this version of the family group sheet, it was early January of 2010, and at that time my main goal was to get a group sheet that I could fit into my day planner to take with me when I was in the car. Well, since then I've come up with some other things that I would like to add to my group sheet, but I found that I've had issues with making that work. And here's one example. I have an ancestor who both the husband and the wife were born in Europe, and so I would like to be able to add on this group sheet the year of their arrival, or the specific date if I know it. I could put dates down here in this notes section, but I really wanted to have a place up here in the normal cells to indicate that. So what I tried to do was I tried to insert a row below the birth date so that I could indicate that they had a date of arrival. But you can see that it threw off some of the formatting over here, and if I tried to do it a second time because both ancestors had come from abroad, well then I've really got issues over here. And I just could not figure out a good way to fix this using the format that I had created before. So I've updated my form, and I've placed the updated form in the Downloads tab on my blog, so that if you would like to have the ability to make some of the changes that I'm going to show you today, you can have access to that form as well. So now this is the ancestor that I was referring to, Alexander Betts and his wife Mary Hersher. And with this new format that I have, you are able to come in and insert rows, and it doesn't throw off the formatting. I'm able to keep my entire table. Now you may be noticing that it looks like some pieces are disappearing down here. And one of the ways that I changed this form was that this half of the table is actually inside of a text box. And if I increase the size of the text box, then I can see the rest of that table, and it doesn't try to jump over and add things up here at the beginning. So now I have the ability to add rows, and because I've got all this extra paper down below, I can make this group sheet as long as it needs to be to include all the information that I would like to have. We may have more than 12 children for our family, so we may want to add some rows on this right side of our group sheet. In order to do that, we are going to insert some rows. Now, even though you can't see it here, there are actually 2 rows in that one cell. If I want to see those rows more clearly, I can come up to the Layout tab in the Table Tools, and over here on the left, View Grid Lines. Now I can see that this cell is all 1, but these cells each have 2 rows. If I'm going to insert lines below, I want to have my cursor in the bottom section of a cell, and I'm going to need to insert below 2 times to get both of those lines in there. Now I need to do a little more adjusting. I need to take these 2 cells and merge them together. Again, in the Layout tab of the Table Tools, right here is a button to merge those cells. I'm going to do the same thing with these 2 cells. And now for these 3 cells, I don't want that line to show up in the middle, so what I'm going to do is come up to the Design tab of the Table Tools, and I'm going to click on the borders, and you can see all the borders that are currently being used in that cell or that group of cells. So I'm going to turn off the top border. I don't want that top border to show. And now I just need to go through and adjust my numbering. I can add as many rows as I want by following this process. Here's another example of an issue that has bothered me a lot, and that is the fact that this ancestor doesn't have very many children, and I just kind of considered all of this space down here to be wasted space. What could I do with that space that would give me more information that would be easily viewable? For this specific ancestor, I was trying to prove who all the children of James Caan Sr. might be. And the way that I was doing that was by following land records. Not only did children sell land that they had inherited from the father, but also the grandchildren, when they went to sell their land, had mentioned that it had come to them through their parents because they had inherited it through James Caan Sr. If I tried to make a group sheet for every single grandchild from all of the different children of James Caan Sr., I would have had a stack of papers and far too many names to keep straight in my mind. So I decided that I wanted to keep a list of all the grandchildren on this group sheet, and I could do that using the columns that are already here because there are only 3 children. So what I decided to do was to make a row showing that I was going to list the names of all the children for each child down below. So let's go back to our other form. And first I want to show you that the first thing that I did was to shade all of these cells to be that gray color, to kind of set off that there was going to be something different below. I highlighted those cells, and then I come to the Design tab in the Table Tools, and here is the icon for shading. I just wanted a light gray so that I could just illustrate that this was going to be a different section. So now I've put a title at the top of every column. I'm not going to include names here, although I certainly could if there had been 4 children. And now I have a list of all of the grandchildren for Rebecca Caan. And I used this column to indicate that if I had put died in parentheses after a name, that indicated that that child had died in infancy, and therefore I did not have to search for land records in their name. If I had wanted to add names in this column, I could, and I don't have to unmerge that cell. If I type a name and want to come down to the next line, I simply hit my Enter button, and then I can go ahead and type an additional name. But what if I needed 5 columns because there were 5 children? There is a way to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these cells across here. I want to turn these 4 columns into 5. To do that, the first thing I need to do is to merge them into one. The Layout tab of the Table Tools, I'm going to merge those cells all into one. And now I'm going to split the cells, and I'm going to tell it I want that one column now to be 5 columns wide, and I'm going to go ahead and make it 2 rows deep. Now the alignment does not match up with the other cells, but I could now go across here and add grandchildren for 5 different children instead of 4. I could do that to as many rows as I want to, and again I could insert duplicates of this line down below so that I could continue to add as many grandchildren as I needed to. One more time, I would come all the way across here, and I would get rid of that top border line in there by coming to the Design tab, then clicking the borders and removing the top border. So just because I start my chart with 4 columns across here doesn't mean that I have to stick with 4 columns all the way. Notice here that a little bit of this table has started to disappear, so I just need to click on it to reveal the text box border, drag that down, and now I can see the rest of that table. The next idea I had came when I discovered the will of an ancestor, John Carl Schmidt. I knew that he had a wife, Carolyn Fritz, and I knew that they had 4 children, but after reading his will, I discovered that there were 2 other wives, and in his will, he gave the names of the children of each of those wives. What a great piece of information to have all together on one form so that if I'm seeing another name somewhere, I can determine exactly how they were related. This is how this group sheet looks after I've added that information that I derived from the will. And really the only thing that's different is that when I went to shade this row, I merged those cells together so that the text in that cell centered itself over the group of columns. So let's go back to our other form. Now I'm going to highlight all of these cells together. In the Layout tab of the Table Tools, I'm going to merge those cells. In the Design tab, I'm going to change the shading to be a light gray. I'm going to type some text. These are children of the first wife, whose name he did not give, sadly. I'm going to highlight that text and I'm going to say I want it centered, I want it larger, maybe I want it italicized, and I want it bold. After I added all the information for the children and changed these header rows, I went through and I renumbered so that I could tell quickly how many children each wife had. Seeing how this group sheet would look once I had separated it into segments like this made me think of another ancestor. August Schmidt and his wife Caroline only had 2 children. For this case, this family was very well documented, so I wasn't necessarily tracking the grandchildren, but I was trying to find out a little bit more about the parents. And I was also tracking the siblings because every sibling went to a different state, so I needed to keep track of where to look for records. So using the same idea for keeping track of all the children of the multiple wives, I was able to use that same formatting to not only keep track of his children, but of his siblings and any information that I had on the husband's parents as well as the wife's parents. Now I've got everything here at my fingertips to try to take this family back an additional generation. I hope you found some great ideas for ways that you can amp up your own group sheet. Join me next time to see what kind of things I've done to enhance the bottom half of this sheet.